What's up, y'all? Really happy to be back. Mark Savvy of Savvy Geeks. This week, we're going to be talking about Eternals. MCU flop or fans bring it to the top? I don't know what that is. No, fans did not bring it to the top. It was considered a failure, I think, right? Like, don't you think it was a failure? But the issue with that is, I think part of the reason it didn't do as well as it could have was the time it came out. Although you could argue Shang-Chi did pretty well under similar circumstances. Why didn't Eternals? I think Eternals was a really good movie. I thought it was artistic in a way that I hadn't seen in Marvel movies in the past. So I really appreciated that. But it had shortcomings that brought it down a bit. That's just the reality of it. I mean, looking at the budget for Eternals, the budget was really high. It was $236 million. I guess to do that kind of artistic style that I was talking about that Chloe Zhao brought to the table, it was pricey, right? But on that high of a budget, it really only made $400 million. So I guess that's not too bad, but it's also not too great. Let me pull up what Shang-Chi did, actually. I forget. We talked about it in the last episode, but I don't remember what it did. So Shang-Chi, which I thought was a success, had a much shorter budget at $200 million, and it made $30 million more. So it was definitely more of a success, but like marginally, I would say. Although I think Eternals got a tax credit. I have to look into that. I believe they got a tax credit. No, that was I think that was the Marvels they got a tax credit. I forget which movie. Let me know in the comments if you remember. But the thing with Eternals was it takes place in the MCU, and it's foundational to the universe that they've built. You can't not have an Eternals 2 or expand on that story. Tiamat is shooting out of the planet. So how are you supposed to not continue the Eternal story? Like, the creators of the universe themselves were introduced in this movie. You have to have more talked about. You can't just like not have a movie for, what was it, like 7 years? Like, I don't know. Like, they're probably not even going to do an Eternals 2. I think they shelved Eternals 2 now. Eternals 1 came out 3 years ago. They haven't done anything, not talked about anything. They had Harry Styles' character just completely shelved. Thanos' brother. Come on. Like, what are you doing? And Shang-Chi's not coming out till after the mutant phase? What a waste. I cannot believe it was just announced recently that Shang-Chi's not coming out till after the mutant, till after the this current saga's over. So that's like another 5 years at least, probably. Such a waste. Like, what a mess Marvel's in. Like, I really hope that once Secret Wars comes out, that they can do a proper reset and fix what they've done. It's just in such disarray. I love Marvel. Every movie I've watched I really like, but their long-term plans are just not hitting for me. Eternals was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. I really liked the characters. I'm trying to pick characters right now that stood out to me, and I loved them all for different reasons. I guess my favorites would be Kingo. I liked Eros at the end, but I guess I'm only going to talk about the people I saw in the main movie. I like Kingo. I like Thena. Cersei was great. Druig. Black Knight, Dane Whitman was good for the limited time. Icarus was awesome. Sprite was good. Phastos. Ajax was a good leader. Gilgamesh was awesome. I didn't really like how the deviants were portrayed, but maybe they would have gone to be more like their comic counterparts the more they became evolved. But in the comics, they're basically like the shapeshifters. So they can look like regular people. And I would have preferred that over whatever the hell they showed us. I didn't like how Kingo in the end just kind of disappeared. He wasn't part of the final confrontation. But I did love how the Celestials were portrayed. I kind of wished we saw more of the Celestials speaking, but obviously they have to be more existential because of the gravity of who they are, right? Eternals, for me, it was at its best when it was showing that Chloe Zhao style of the different time periods, and the artistic nature of it. I kind of wished it was more coherent, the story. And I think the most disappointing thing about Eternals as a whole was actually, at least for me personally, how Marvel handled it afterwards. Just, we hear absolutely nothing. Icarus flies into the sun, might as well the rest of the Eternals. Like, we hear nothing. The Black Knight, what the hell is happening with that? You hear Mahershala Ali's character, Blade, at the end, and literally nothing comes from it. This movie had so many potential storylines that they could have expanded, and Marvel just shelved all of it. How can you just shelve such important stories to do what you think the audience wants? Okay, this movie wasn't that bad. You could have fixed some of these mistakes, and it could have been way better the next time. Give her Eternals 2. We need Eternals 2. It didn't have the humor that typically was in a Marvel movie, but it still had some humor. The action scenes were great. I loved how they portrayed the resident speedster of the Eternals, Makari. My darling Makari. That should be the caption of the episode. That was an awesome speedster scene. I think that was probably one of my favorite speedsters scenes that I've seen. I like probably the Flash movie had better ones, but overall, like I think Makari was up there. We don't see enough speedsters in movies anymore. I wish we saw more of them. So I guess the question comes down to where would Eternals rank on our MCU power rankings? I don't know. Like, what do you think? You think that it should be higher, or do you think it should be lower? I believe half the listeners will say it's top 10, the other half will say bottom 10. Now, unfortunately, I tend to be in the bottom 10 part, and it's not necessarily an indictment on Eternals, which had a lot of great moments. I'm more talking about how much I loved the other movies so far. And I will say, like, this movie took a swing that not a lot of movies in the MCU take, so it should get bonus points for that. But this isn't necessarily a creative rankings, it's my personal favorite rankings. So with that in mind, I have to put Eternals at number 22. So that means the only movies that Eternals is ahead of are Dark World, Black Widow, Iron Man 3, and Captain Marvel. Needless to say, I wanted to see more. I really want to see Eternals 2. I don't understand how we're not like seeing way more of Eternals. It just absolutely boggles my mind. They've made the universe too big, and now they're just cutting shit out randomly to make it smaller and fit a narrative they think the fans want. But it's not working. Stop. Every MCU movie I cover, I just get more and more mad about the overall direction of the universe. And it would have just been fine if they just focused on the multiverse saga with Kang. Just recast him. Recast him and keep these movies. It's not that big of a flop that you can't do a second one. Like, come on. Thor Dark World was like critically panned. You still did Ragnarok, and look how good Ragnarok was. And honestly, the Iron Man trilogy isn't that great. We all talk about it, how much we love it, but Iron Man 1 was amazing, and Iron Man 2 and 3 were just like, a good time. I still love them, but it's not like, I guess in the box office, they crushed it. That's, at the end of the day, that's all they want. They want that number to start with a 5, otherwise it's a failure. I think the best thing that these kind of movies can do, Eternals, the Marvels, Captain Marvels, you gotta have a budget under $200 million, and then the studio might give you a little more leeway. What are you gonna do? I will say this though, I think Eternals was one of the more polarizing movies that the MCU has put out. The next movie that's coming up though, that is not polarizing. I gotta be real. If you didn't like this movie, that's cool, but I think we can all agree that the majority of fans did. Can you guess what that movie is? I'll give you a second. The next movie on our MCU rewatch is Spider-Man No Way Home. Oh, I'm so excited to watch that one. I'm going in for some gum surgery. I gotta do a gum graft, so let's see how long I'm in a miserable mood for after that, and then we'll talk about when the episode's gonna come out. So this is Mark Savvy of Savvy Geeks, signing off.